This episode of Navel Gazing is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. Adding a Valley charity to your estate plan creates a lasting legacy that tells future generations what causes matter to you. Your action will inspire others to follow your lead and make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Learn more at valleygivesback.org, an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Plan now, give later, and impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues.
Hi, and welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indies weekly talk show. This episode is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. Check out that website. So, today, we're going to be talking to Jack Walsh. He's the chairman of the Derby Water Pollution Control Authority, Derby WPCA. It's a volunteer-appointed position, by the way. A few years back, residents of Derby approved spending about $30 million on a variety of repairs to the city's infrastructure, sewer infrastructure to be specific. That includes rebuilding pump stations and then a boatload of improvements down at the main water pollution control plant, which is in downtown Derby, basically off Caroline Street, stretching towards the Housatonic River. So there's been a lot going on with the WPCA, but it's one of those issues that when you try to write about it, it's very easy to get lost in the weeds. So I thought just having Jack on, and this interview will be conducted by telephone, would be good for us just to get an idea of where we are in this process. Keep in mind that when this referendum was approved a few years back, we were told that it would add an additional roughly $250 to every single-family WPCA bill, single-family residential house. The bill's already about $300 to $400, at least the one in my house. So it's something that eventually we're going to have to pay for. Makes it important. Without further ado, for an update on the WPCA infrastructure projects is Jack Walsh. Okay, so on the line with me is Jack Walsh, the chairman of the Derby Water Pollution Control Authority. Hi, Jack, and Happy New Year.
And same to you, Gene. How you doing?
I'm doing real well, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about the Derby WPCA and the various infrastructure projects that are moving along in the city of Derby. It's a tough thing to write about because there's just a lot of moving parts, and it's easy to get caught in the weeds, I think.
Yeah, it is a very complicated thing, and this is a great opportunity to keep people in town apprised of what actually is involved. It's not a simple thing, and we do want people to understand, what it is, how long it's going to take, what it's costing.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Like when we first passed this referendum a few years back, in the run-up to it, I had repeatedly reported and been told the impact on our WPCA bill would be about, if I remember correctly, $256 for a single-family residential average user. But that bill hasn't hit us yet. What's the status of, when will we start paying for this when will we start seeing this in our WPCA bills?
Next year's bill. In fact, if you notice this year's bill, when you got the bill, first of all, I think we did a better job explaining the bill. But also, there was a clear notice on there that next year the payments will start, and it will be approximately $250. I don't have the exact figure as yet. But, the concept was that we wouldn't start collecting the money until we started spending the money.
Okay.
And now we are spending the money, and you can see progress being made on the entire project, even though it's going to take longer than expected.
And just concentrate on that bill for another moment there. So you're saying next year, the bills go out in July, is that right? Or they're due in July, or?
I think they went out in September, and you have the option of making one payment or two payments. most people are still doing one payment, but you can make two payments. I think it's September, October, and then again in March.
Okay, and so this new one, the new fee that'll be on the $250 fee. When will we get that bill in the mail?
You'll get this bill one time. It'll come together. It won't be a separate bill. It'll be one bill, but you'll see it as two charges.
Okay, and so that's going to be September?
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for...
We'll set the rate, and I believe the bill itself goes out in September.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and then I saw, I guess maybe it was last night, the Derby WPCA met, and I think there was a joint meeting with the infrastructure committee. Is that correct? Did that meeting actually happen?
Yeah, let me give you an update on it and an understanding of what that is. When the referendum was passed, it's city money, and the city established a joint committee of the WPCA and the so-called infrastructure committee, and we meet almost every month to approve the bills and watch the progress on the whole thing. So yesterday we met, and we were approving bills for the two pump stations that we have finished, and to get an update on the third pump station, which is in design right now.
Okay, and the two pump stations that have been completed, where are they?
One is at Burkeville,
okay,
and the other one is on South Division Street.
Okay, and those projects are 100% done?
They're 100% done. There are a couple items on punch lists that have to be completed, but they're fully functional. Okay, the punch list items have to do with landscaping and some smaller issues, but for all intents and purposes, they are done. And we were under ordered to get those done by August 31st, and we did.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, the Derby WPCA was under the watchful eye of, at various times, both DEEP, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and the federal EPA. Basically, it went back to just maintenance problems and sort of I guess you could characterize it as a history of neglect, but it's all good and on the straight and narrow as of now, it seems.
Yeah, I think we're back in good shape. I want to give credit to people like John Sacku, who was a previous chairman, and really brought to light the issues that were there and that they would have to be addressed that led to the referendum. Now, it turns out there were some other issues that the EPA came in and forced the city to sign the consent decree, which you have on your website as well, detailing what needed to be done. And, I'm pleased that since then, we've met every single deadline that they've imposed on us for all the different studies and reports that were needed. We are up to date on all of them. Our next phase is the Roosevelt Drive pump station, and that's under review in Hartford right now.
Oh, you squelched there for a second. You still with me, Jack?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, it sounded like maybe you got hit by lightning there. I got a little worried, but everything's okay. Yeah, so the Roosevelt Drive pump station, this is the one, the existing one is across from a former gas station's a repair shop across from Cemetery Avenue there, right, basically in the area of the Dewdrop Inn. And that, from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was one of the most problematic issues with the WPCA, because this was a pump station that would fail basically every time it rained because of this inundation of rainwater and stormwater that would make its way into that pump station and cause it to overflow, and it's literally above the Housatonic River, and it would pollute the river. So this one is that it badly needed a replacement, and I think if I remember, that's a multi-million-dollar one. That's an expensive one, correct?
Yeah. I think in the referendum it was up to $8 or $9 million. We think we're going to be under that because of what we approved. That's still subject to the approval of EPA, the final design. It's true, and people have to understand when these plants were originally built, the Clean Water Act was different than it is now. In Derby, and a lot of towns are going through this. We're not the only ones. You have an antiquated sewer system that was built to handle the sewage, but take Derby. It's got 40 miles, 40 miles of pipes, some as old as 100 years. And, some of them leak a little bit, et cetera. the sewage treatment plant, was designed to treat sewage.
Mm.
But when we have these heavy storms, because of the way everything was hooked up, we get an overflow of water that's not sewage. It's just rainwater and whatnot that goes into the system, and the system can handle all that. So it's a matter of upgrading everything and separating out all the storm water from the sewage. And, again, we have a plan. We're working on that right now. In fact, probably going to sign a contract next day or two to do some of the work for this year. But it will take us years to get all of that done.
And this is the dreaded I&I, right? Isn't that what it's called, referred to?
Absolutely.
And I remember I had an engineer that Derby had hired come to my house actually to do sort of a demonstration to see, because they were going door to door to try to get an idea of where the problems are. Basically, you have a lot of old buildings or old houses where it rains, it goes to your gutter, it goes down the side gutter there, and then into the sewer instead of somewhere else. And I was one of the problem properties, which was allegedly, I'll say allegedly. But and it's going to take years to separate all that, right? Because that's the way the city was designed.
That's right. People didn't understand that, and of course, it's expensive to make those changes. The problem didn't crop up overnight, and it's not going to go away overnight. It's going to take us years to get through this. Some of the work in the downtown area is WPCA related, and the way storms. People's runoff flows into the system. Hopefully some of that will be corrected as Route 34 gets done. But it will take a while. We just did Emmett Avenue. I think you follow that closely. There was road work done there, but we took the opportunity to also do our sewer work at the same time, which meant that we saved money. By doing it together instead of us digging up the side, or let's say the city was ready to go first, them digging up the road and repairing it, and then us coming back a year later and digging up. We did it all together. So there was a savings in that. And there could be a savings in downtown. The same thing with the Route 34 project if we do our stuff at the same time. So, we're trying to do it in a planned manner that's most effective and also most cost effective.
Right, because it's like people think sometimes, and I'm glad you mentioned John Saku, because I think sometimes when John would get up there and speak at some of these alderman meetings before the referendum, before it got actually put out to vote, some in the public, if you weren't paying attention, and who's reading, it's not like people are reading WPCA meeting minutes every chance they get.
No.
But some people would treat John like he was a paid employee. This is a volunteer appointed position. He wasn't getting anything out of talking about that stuff and telling people, hey, you're going to have a $250 bill eventually because we have to fix all this stuff in this old city that was once, the economy bedrock locally with these factories that still exist, but the systems that were put in place to support those things are just terribly outdated at this point. But Jack, just backtracking for 1 second to this Roosevelt Drive pump station there on Route 34, do you have any timeline as to when construction will begin there? And I assume that'll be a highly visible one given the amount of traffic that goes on that road every day.
Yeah, and we're already working with DOT and the Derby Police Department on those arrangements. But where it stands right now is that the plant is mainly designed. By November 1st, we were required to submit what's called a 95% design to DEEP and EPA. And they review it, and then they come back and say, okay, this is acceptable, and you can go out to bid on it. We have not heard back yet. There is a little hang-up that we're waiting to clarify. But, our goal would be to go out to bid in the next couple of months to start construction, this year. And it will still take a year to build it, but that's what we're hoping for. And we met all our timelines. Now we need EPA and DEEP to meet their timelines and give us the go-ahead.
It's a lot of letters involved.
Inland Wetlands gave their permission a week ago, and Planning and Zoning gave their approval Tuesday night. So you don't see all this, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that has to take place before you can put a shovel in the ground.
And so you have 2 completed, a third that is making its way to shovel in the ground start date.
Right.
And then I believe, and then you have, of course, what's going on. You have work to do replacing pipes under Route 34, which will theoretically get done once the state comes in and starts that major widening project in downtown Derby on Main Street there. And then you have
Right.
improvements. I remember going to the water pollution control plant, the main facility down there off Caroline Street, right near the Greenway and the Housatonic, Naugatuck rivers. Down that way, and that basically there were some of the equipment in there was held together with duct tape, band-aids, and prayers. What's the status of repairs that are being made to the main facility?
We're on a kind of a day-to-day basis. The referendum did cover improvements there. Unfortunately for us, in the long run, it may be a good thing. We're on hold with that because the state has now provided a grant to the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments to do a study as to the possibility of regionalization of the sewage plants from here to Naugatuck. So until that study is done, we can't do anything to the plant because the EPA won't approve anything. We might be able to do some minor repairs, but we can't do anything that's major, because who knows what the status of that plant will be when this regional study is completed. So we're on hold, and that plant probably is a year away from completion. And that's, it's a problem for us in that we hope nothing serious happens to the plant in the interim.
Yeah, and because the fear is that if you have equipment that can no longer be fixed in this Band-Aid scenario that's been going on for years down there, that could cost us money, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So we're trying to balance it. As soon as we get through with the approval and get going on Roosevelt Drive, we are going to ask our engineers to come back and take a look again at the plant to see, are there any interim steps that we can do that, if we do them, would still prove a value after that study is completed? Because you don't want to spend a lot of money and then have EPA come and say, well, we're going to tear down the whole plant, or you're going to have to modify it in a different way. So, trying to balance all these things, it's not easy, and it's not easy on staff. I mean, they have to maintain a very old plant, and it's not the easiest thing. Finding parts, et cetera, is a bit of a challenge. But, again, I think we're doing a better job than we were previously on that. We haven't had any major problems. We've had a couple of very minor spills. And we're trying to keep people up to date on that. I'm waiting for the city to finish an upgrade to the website. They're doing some work on that now. We want to keep people better informed.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, like, you had said you're doing a better job than you were previously, and I assume a part of that is because we're all aware of the WPCA pollution control, whatever it is, the facility down there. We all know it's there when,
right.
As opposed to like maybe 10 years ago where it was a problem, but it really wasn't. It didn't have the attention. Once it was clear that there had to be a public vote to spend upwards of $30 million on this thing, now everyone seems to be aware of the problem. Now when you have a major development, like I'm thinking of the redevelopment of Marshall Lane, one of the things that neighbors brought up, showing they were sort of in tune to the WPCA, they were asking about, what about water use?
Right.
They were worried about that, and it was sort of used as a way to possibly oppose that development. But if I remember, there was something like $8 or $9 million, or maybe even $10 million that was supposed to go into the main facility just to improve it, not to rebuild it in any way, just to fix things and upgrade things that needed to be upgraded. Is there any chance our bill then, if that work is on hold, we'll have a bill of less than $250, since now the money isn't being spent as much as it was supposed to be when we voted on this thing?
I doubt that, Eugene, because at the end of the day, that work is going to be done. And right now, we will start drawing down the funds on 3 pump stations and the I&I work. So, we do have bills to pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess the other thing that you had mentioned, this state-funded study that's being done, that the Valley Council of Governments, Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. I always get that. That's the right name, right?
Right.
All right, so they're in charge of that. That's been going on for a while, but it's still about a year to completion. And I imagine any recommendations that come out of that study will be years to implement as well. Is that sort of the feeling?
Yeah, I would think so because who knows what they're going to recommend. I mean, it may come down to the fact that maybe the existing system is the only way to go, or maybe they'll come back and say, well, we can build one big facility, or maybe they'll recommend a regional authority. There are a lot of possibilities, but the bottom line is the sewage isn't going to go away. The sewage is still going to have to be treated and taken care of no matter what configuration it is. So, we have the report done and get going with whatever we have to do, but we do have to wait, and hopefully it'll turn out to Derby's benefit, that there's something out there that could save us money. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, and if anything, this will answer. There's always been questions floating, at least since 2009, of do we send it to Ansonia? Do we regionalize in some way? And everybody you asked would have an answer. But you'd ask somebody else on a Tuesday, and the answer would change. There was so much up for debate, and I think one of the things that this study is supposed to settle is that debate. We'll have a third party giving, hopefully, an honest, definitive answer as to what's going to happen with the WPCA and how to pay for this stuff long term, outside of all the repairs that you're doing now and will continue to do based on that $30 million referendum that was passed a few years back. That's sort of the rate, isn't it?
These circumstances, the work we're already doing would be needed.
Either way.
No matter what plan they come up with, you still have to be able to pump the sewage to a treatment plant. So, we won't lose anything from what we've done now. The question is, what about the main facility itself? That's the next big question.
Gotcha. And then just finally, Jack, was there anything that came out of last night's meeting that you want to touch upon? Anything particularly newsworthy or that needs to get out to the public about those meetings last night?
No, again, the big thing last night was that we're just about done with the two pump stations. Again, we have to finish the punch list, but they're working. And then we're waiting from DEEP and EPA to give us the go-ahead on Roosevelt Drive. There's one piece that they're studying about a waiver of a floodline issue, and that conceivably could hold us up a little bit. We hope not, but that's a decision they have to make.
And such is life when you're doing a project like this, involved with all those different agencies. That seems to be just the way it goes.
And it is multiple agencies. We've got DEEP, we've got DOT, and we've got EPA, and then we have all our own regulations in the city. We've been working, as I said, with inland wetlands, the planning and zoning, the police department. I'm sure the fire department will have to be involved too because of the flow of traffic and whatnot when this gets built. So it's got a lot of moving pieces. This is not a simple thing.
Hi, this is Eugene, most likely interrupting myself to bring you a message from our sponsor. What will you be remembered for? Adding a charity to your estate plan creates a legacy that tells future generations what causes mattered to you during your life. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. It's an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Plan now, give later, and impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org. Now back to the show. I was going to thank you for your time and ask you if there's any last thoughts you want to share that people should know about.
No, just, hopefully they pay attention and keep watching. And, if they have ideas or even criticism, we're willing to listen. Look, this is a project for everybody that lives in town. I'll give you a little funny story. We're in the midst of this, and I'm out in my front yard, and I said, geez, there's something wrong here. Guess what? I had to replace my sewer pipe coming into the house.
And that you were alerted by an odor, I guess? Is that what it was?
No, I couldn't smell anything, but I could see, liquid. One of my plants seemed to be dying, so I had to hire somebody to come in and dig it up and replace the pipe. But the pipe was probably 100 years old, and the roots of the tree in my front yard had I'd crushed it.
Oh, the irony there. Yeah, I have this little indentation in my front yard. I don't want to call it a sinkhole because I'll jinx myself, but I keep looking at it. I'm like, that can't be good. That's not. And look, I don't know if it's getting bigger, if it's my imagination, but yeah, it keeps me up at night.
Well, that raises another issue. People need to understand the pipe that runs from a person's house to the middle of the road is their issue. So if something goes that, as in my case, it was my expense.
Yeah, and I don't even want to ask how much that cost. But I remember John Sacchi, when he was the chairman of the WPCA, he had a backup in his residence too. So there's something about that. It's a curse.
I wish they had told me that before I said I'd do this.
All right, Jack. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and thank you for your service to the city. I do appreciate it.
Thanks, and thanks for all you do, Eugene. This is great that people get a chance to see what we're doing and how their money's being spent. It's important.
All right. Have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
So, stay warm.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding. TV sucking ideas from our head. Public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day. Online clickbait, a prurient way. There's free information here to stay. Not even hookers give it away. Advertising, metastasizing, newsroom shrinking, constant attrition. We'll ride the dinosaur. We'll ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur. Deadlines, bylines, pictures too. An editorial comment for a buck or two. Fire down the block, the murder next door. And now we wonder what it's all for. Social media coming free to you, funny pages, the mayor's wages, criminal seats, corruption schemes, ink state wretches asking tough questions. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. The presses are running all through the night. We're printing the truth with all of our might. We're platform agnostics, got that interweb too. Buy an ad, see what we can do. We still have subscribers, still have our fans. We're here every day, so give us a chance and we'll make an art stand. Just hold us in your hand, and we'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur.